Well, Patricia O'Connor and Frida Reba Darcy here, and today on the Bonsai balcony, let's just start here. A couple of weeks ago, or last week or so, I did a little show, or Frida and I did a little show about bald cypress trees. And I was talking about how we do our bald cypress trees, and I was talking about their cousins, the Dawn Redwood, and at some point I talked about the history of bald cypress trees, how they predate insects along with their cousins, the Dawn Redwood, and I was talking about how they are deciduous conifers along with their cousins, the Dawn Redwood. Today, I'd like to do a program about my Dawn Redwood, which you can kind of see creeping into the shot here. But first, they're very, very, very close cousins to this guy. And whenever I was saying that these bald cypress trees are prehistoric, that they pretty much are some of our original forests, that's pretty much the way that is, along with several species of trees that are now extinct. And for a long time, scientists thought that the Dawn Redwood had been extinct for millions of years. And even though they know that they found fossils, and they found imprints of coal, and they found petrified remains of the Dawn Redwood in North America and in Canada, as far up as Canada, and in Asia and China, and just basically all over the world. It was a very, very, very broad-reaching species. So thought to have been extinct for millions of years. In 1944, a Chinese forester reported a large one growing in central China. And the Save the Redwood Federation sent a crew out there to investigate, and they found several thousand, and they took cuttings and they took seeds and they propagated those trees and spread them all around the world. And now the Dawn Redwood is a re-emerging species, and they didn't originally know, this is ours. They didn't originally know what kind of climate they were in. You know, they could kind of had a guess because of the fossil evidence, and they kind of knew what kind of climate those places were in when the tree was in them. But from the region that it grew in China, that didn't really tell them, would the tree grow well in Canada? Well, yeah, it will, I think. They do fine up there. They grow in much colder regions even than the one that it was found in China. So that was kind of the long and the small of that. They both have something as prehistoric trees. They both have this one feature in common. Every branch starts off as a leaf. So a leaf starts off as green, and it could be anything, right? But then at some point, if it begins to bifurcate off, then the tree will have made a decision that this is a future branch. It's not just a leaf. From this little thing that you see right there, and also this is upside down, I'll get to that in a minute. From there, we will begin to see this branch do a couple of things. One, it'll start to back bud, and the leaves don't necessarily back bud, branches do. So even if it looks like a leaf, if you see it back budding, the tree has already decided that it's graduating up to the big leaf, the big league, or big leaf, from leaf to branch. Every one of these guys started off as leaves. And come around fall, sometimes some of those leaves will get the okay to join the big leagues, only it's too late and they don't harden off in time before winter comes and they die off. So they don't all make it. All those that are called don't make it. But that's kind of how that goes. So all these branches all started off as leaves on these trees. Now, yesterday this tree was right there and it looked quite a bit different. And by quite a bit different, basically, and by quite a bit different, I mean, the tree has been in recovery for a couple of years since we suffered from a couple of dieback incidents. The first thing, strike one for this tree, was when I did a heavy styling and then decided to change my mind and then did a heavy restyling probably in the same year. Complete rookie move. And I also practiced my carving on this tree, so it got a lot of stuff. I didn't do anything. I've never repotted the tree yet. But I did so much work to it, and I liked my second idea well enough that I decided to leave it alone, and then I decided that I was lucky to have gotten away with all the crap that I'd done to it, and if I had it all to do again, it was growing really fast and ramificating really well. And then I probably should have tried to do something a little bit more like a formal upright with it, because it would have done that. I think at the time I had an idea to make a cathedral out of it. So about the time I said, whenever we get time to come around to next fall and we can start, cutting back our choices on limbs and stuff, maybe we'll start taking down some of those tops and try to grow a more formal upright out of that, because it will make that a lot faster than I would have thought growing in. And it was about that time the tree got powdery mildew and just totally defoliated the tree. So it didn't come back that year from that. It came back the next spring, and then in the middle of the summer we got a 90-degree day that caught me off guard while I was in the city. And when I came in, this tree had a lot of new growth on it because it had been doing well that spring, but all of that stuff was dying back, or a lot of it was. So that was strike 2 and strike 3, and at that point the tree shut down in about midsummer, and I didn't see another bud until this spring. It started busting out early in spring. It was actually February, but I was really glad to see it in February. But that's when the tree started busting out, and I'm like, all bets are off. We're just, whatever the tree makes, whatever the tree does, I don't care if it's pointed south or back or what, we're going to let the tree flush out and make whatever it wants to make, and whatever it can turn into chlorophyll, and whatever it can turn into energy, whatever it can do to start repairing itself. We'll just let it do that for a little while, and then after that we'll see if we can get some branches going in some places that we like, because we still have a trunk that looks pretty good, and we still have, not all of our carving work was totally the worst. Most of that is probably still pretty salvageable. So that was kind of where we went with that. And so far it was predictable enough. What we had to start off with was big stumps that had already overgrown. Remember, this originally been a cathedral, so it had multiple apexes. So all of the bases of those were too big. So we cut all of those back, but we couldn't cut them back to nothing, because that would have left the tree bare. So we cut those back to nubs and then let those flush out, and then hope that the tree would come out with some branches. But it didn't. All of those just flushed out, and they all tried to go back straight up. So we let those do that until yesterday afternoon. The whole tree was in a broom thing going like this, except in the places in between my fingers was a bunch of more fronds, and you really couldn't see what was going on in between them. And once I just decided to throw wires to all of those while they were still malleable enough to go some direction besides straight up. I thought at one point maybe I would make this our Friday night bonsai. And then I decided that would be 45 minutes of watching me do the same thing to different branches. And I just didn't really seem like quality. So I decided to watch TV instead and wire this. So I did, and it was also, the TV was a little bit more fascinating than the tedium of doing this one at a time. But it came out weird. We can see that my original carve work has got some heavy rollback going, and these are the before mentioned stubs that were allowed to branch out, this one and this one. And everything up until now seems to have stopped. There's no growth coming farther up here. Also, I pulled these down and pulled these down, and all of these down, and all of those down, and those all seem to be doing okay. This one looks like it's got a pulled shoulder. We don't know how that's going to do for sure. This one also has a pulled shoulder. No guarantees on that. Maybe if I quit poking on it like that, it'll be okay. But that is kind of what we did. Now, since all of this stuff was doing that, and now it's doing that, all of this foliage, as you can see, is upside down. And at first, the thoughts were, why don't you go through and just do what you would normally do? Cut everything on that's sticking straight up, and cut everything off that's sticking straight down, and make all this stuff into paths. But then I was like, hold on, Pat, we started off saying we didn't really want to cut anything on this tree anyway. Plus, a lot of this foliage may turn over like this, just rotate over, or it may not. It may, the bottom side of it, belly side up, may burn, in which case only the stuff that's hanging down beneath shadow might fare better. So it would be that if I made a decision on what to cut off, I might cut off the thing that I might be living off of, or the tree might be living off of, in a couple of weeks when it reacts to what I've done to it. But all of these right here, these were all tops, and now they've been put back into branch place. And I don't think necessarily, well, not necessarily, what we have is branches across from branches in bar branch mode. We have bases of branches that are bulbous, huge, across from one another. Here they're too big, and here they're too big. But that's in keeping with what we said we were going to do here. And what I mean by that is we just want to get a lot of energy going up the trunk of this tree. If it wants to make a new branch out here, or a new branch out here, the way the cypress tree's going back here, if it wants to start back budding, that'd be great by us. If it wants to start doing some stuff up here, now that we've pulled all this stuff down, it's no longer the top dog. Maybe we can try to encourage, if we go a couple of weeks and all of this seems to be recovering, but we still don't see anything up here, maybe I go through and I start cutting some tips and see if releasing some hormones in the tips of these branches can get something going up here. Having said that, at some point I'll probably start cutting out a lot of this dead wood down to some kind of more likable shape. It's not totally awesome. I mean, it's not totally awesome in some positions. It's not totally the worst in some positions, but with some work, maybe if I start scouting around and find something that was in similar shape, that somebody did something tasteful to, or if nothing else, at least something in similar shape, and see what I don't want to do, you can kind of see how much this rollover has turned into. See, that's trying to be a new top of a tree. And if that's all we end up with, we'll cut this part off, go with that, take a branch that comes out right here, and let that be the new top of the tree after we've carved out this center and maybe left some of this bark back here for just that look of chaos or whatever. Anyway, the main thing is that there's some of these branches that are too thick and too blocky and too big to be used, at least they're encouraging a lot of other branch work. And if we have to carve that to make it look like something that was a product of lightning strike or something like that, we can always get some, we have the wherewithal to do that. Right now, what I would like to see is an exchange of energy. We're just going to continue to feed and treat the tree well, and I'm going to hold back on all of my little styling ideas and pruning. I just wanted to pull all of that stuff down so that we could see if we can encourage something farther up the tree to grow, and we could get an idea what's going on there. If it's not going to do it, we'll start making a new leader, and then I'll carve out all the dead wood and maybe leave some of the bark on the backside. Leave some of this stuff, right? But then carve out all the young white wood on the inside there that would probably just not age that well anyway, or just to give room for a new leader to take up through there. And that probably wouldn't take over a couple of years to get something happening, meanwhile, with all of the energy going in and all those big old huge limbs, maybe the thing will back bud and we can start making some other branches that way. We don't need, but maybe 5 would do us a world of good. And right now I'm thinking the best way to get it is to not to do a lot of chopping and cutting, but to let the stuff, the good, the bad, and the ugly, just continue to make energy. And then later in the fall we'll do some cutback, and we're just going to keep doing stuff to try to encouraging some kind of back budding, which I think is a healthy tree would encourage back budding. Right now, last night I went through and cleaned up a lot of our clover fields that we had in there, and you can still see a lot of fronds sprinkled out through there where I could break some more of those up. But here in a little while I'll put some more bio gold out. It will continue to be fed. I've got it out of the sunlight right now. I'll probably let it recover for a couple of days so that we don't just fry all those upside down branches. They were all pointed up, and now that they've gone from this to this, they're all bellied up. So yeah, we're just gonna. I want to see how the tree responds to that. If it takes them and rotates them, or if it tries to grow them around, which was what I think it'll probably try to do. But we'll see what burns off first, and then we'll clip after that maybe. So anyway, that's what's going on there. That's about all I have going on with the Dawn Redwood. This is an 18-minute show you what I'm doing instead of the 30-minute of watching me tediously put a wire around these guys and then pull them all down. But you can see that's a mess. There's no branch selection going on there, and frankly, all of that's coming out of that huge stub that you see in the back. That would take some carving before we could ever justify what's going on with something the size of that anyway. But if that were to be an example of what all the tree gave us, then that would be an example of what we had to work with, and that would be what we would use. But right now, it made all of this in 3 months. So if it would just give me 4 or 5 branches coming out in the main trunk there, to where we could do that again at our own pace, that'd be pretty awesome. Maybe cutting back some of this will help us. Maybe cutting back those ends a little bit would help us. Speaking of that, you've been watching me cut back the ends on my oaks and not letting them get too long. I've been seeing lately where some of the wisers are instead of doing the cuts like I'm doing, they're pinching, and I kind of see why they're doing that. They don't have those big cut marks for one thing, and they can kind of do that earlier. before the branch gets long. They just give them pinches and get them to branch out faster that way before they start elongating, like I've been talking about. So I'm gonna start thinking more that way, and see and kind of talk more about that the next time we look at this one and the coastal oak behind it. Like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. I took a few days off after the 4th of July. We just rounded the corner and hit 600 subscribers. So that's kind of cool. And we have another tree in the works. Probably will take in a space somewhere up in there here in not too distant future. I've also got I also have another order of 10 that I'm searching for. I haven't seen exactly what I'm looking for yet, but I'm kind of doing that. That'll be for an upcoming project. It will be more pine related stuff. And then we are now going into the bending time of year, and that just means that we're just going to be folding up pines and stuff like they're like we're clowns and they're circus animals with balloons. So yeah, thank you so much for watching.